right, earlier we talked about the EU FLEGT. It's Forest Law Enforcement, Governance and Trade. And in studio with me right now, I've got Kenny David, who is the head of the FLEGT Secretariat, and Simone Beckles. She is from the Guyana Revenue Authority. Kenny, let's talk about this forest law enforcement. This sounds like a serious kind of business. What does this mean?
Forest, the FLEGT, as you mentioned, Forest Law Enforcement, Governance and Trade, is really a trade initiative that Guyana signed on with the European Union, and it is all in an effort to foster trade of timber and timber products between Guyana and the EU. So it's really about getting that market access easier for Guyanese timber to be able to go into the EU market, and hopefully we get a better price as well for that timber.
We already have some people doing trading. I know this is always a little bit of a logging and so on. It has it's a ticklish area because from time to time when you see the coverage of it in the media, there's always something happening. I know there's been an outcry on how they do their logging and so on. Is the Forestry Commission then putting in stricter rules? Because I know the EU might have its own sort of requirements for you to be able to sell to their market.
I think that's a pretty good question, actually. I don't think it's necessarily putting in stricter rules. It's more about it maybe enforcing. Mm-hmm. The thing about FLEGT is that it goes a little beyond just the Forestry Commission, which is why people like the Revenue Authority is also involved. Mm-hmm. So it's also some of the work that they do that probably needs a little bit more enforcement. NIS, for example, as well, is an integral part of all of this. So it's not necessarily, it's more about enforcement rather than putting in new rules as such.
So I find a little bit about NIS being involved very interesting because I can see Guyana Revenue Authority. I'll come back to you to tell me how the NIS is involved, but Simone, over to you.
Well, we need to be part of this process from embryonic stage, and if we can put it simple, when you go through the pieces of legislation and the annexes that we've worked on over the past couple of years, you see that it's simple, it's there, it's in the law, it is written. Mm-hmm. And so it's just basically getting persons to come on board, be part of it. This is about marketing Guyana and our products when we send it out there. So simple things that they're looking for. They're looking at ensuring that we protect the environment, that there's no child labor, that the Guyana Revenue Authority, that they're ensuring that they submit their tax returns, that they're paying taxes. For NIS, that they're paying NIS benefit for the employees. So at the end of the day, come retirement age, there's something for them to collect from NIS. So basically, this is what the FLEGT is all about. It's just about getting Guyanese on board. It's not that we're not trading. We are trading, and Guyana is big on trade facilitation. We also have persons from foreign affairs part of the program to ensure that the legislation is written in such a way that it is not, well, bring any hardship, but also allow for us to continue trading. But once we have to trade with these trade partners and they ask for certain things and Guyana sign on to it, you have to ensure that we comply. So right now it's about the education period, getting people to understand what is it that they were supposed to be doing and to ensure that they continue doing it. And for those persons who they're now coming on board, to make the system easier for them.
All right. So I'm going to come back to you, Kenny, because you with your position at the Forestry Commission, you'll be able to tell us some of the challenges you might have encountered or your agency might have encountered prior to this particular agreement.
Yeah, I think maybe some of the biggest challenges we've had, is really because, again, you have so many different stakeholders that are producing timber and timber products. And it's trying to establish, essentially what FLEGT is seeking to do is establish a standard and maintain that standard. So I think, for one, maybe getting the message out there has been a bit of a challenge because of how Guyana is and the geography and so on. It's not always easy to get to everybody and get their voices in. And then I think people sort of expect as well that when they tell you they want to see this as part of the agreement, they expect that you're going to make it happen. And sometimes it is not always possible. And as Simone pointed out, a lot of the things that we are more or less enforcing is already enshrined in law. And so sometimes persons may want you, it may almost seem like it's flying in the face of the law, but you can't do it because the law doesn't allow for it. And so I think even with our indigenous communities, which is also bringing a lot of timber into the supply chain, and forms a part of what is going to be going to the EU, and it's currently going to the EU. Again, what is required at that level of that stakeholder grouping? What are the things they have to comply with? And of course, some of the challenges, the land issues and so on, titling of land and so on. So there have been some challenges, but I think what FLEGT is allowing, because we are now talking to other agencies that are involved. We're sort of bringing, it's like you're bringing them to the same table and say, hey, we have to sort of work these things out, find solutions, practical solutions, solutions that can work. So at the end of the day, we have an agreement that everybody, is happy with, and they can all access the market equally.
Kenny, if you can tell us one thing that anyone listening to us right now can do to move this process forward.
I would say to the stakeholders, regardless of whether you're private sector, whether you're indigenous, I would say familiarize yourself with the current laws that are, and the requirements of doing the business that you do, and also understand that we're going to come to you, we're going to bring the NIS to you, we're going to bring GRA to you, we're going to have discussion, but understand that really what's going to happen at the end of the day is that once FLEGT becomes operational, you will be required to comply with those laws that are already on paper. So I would say get familiar, get more information. There's a website, get information.
What's the name of the website?
It's on the forestry's website, which is at www.forestry.gov.gy, and there's a little FLEGT tab, EU FLEGT. Once you hit that, there's a lot of information there. I would say access the information. We have videos, DVDs, we have flyers, booklets. Get the information, get the understanding, because once FLEGT becomes operational, then you're expected to perform at that standard, continually.
Simone?
Great. For me, what I want to get out there is to have them to engage the different agencies and find out what is it they will require to submit to them to make this process easier. For GRA, just ensure that your business is registered, you have a TIN, a taxpayer identification number, and for your employees, which will make the system easier. For NIS, ensure that you've registered, they're all on board, the EPAC, what is it that you're required to do with them. So when you get to that stage, you're ready and raring to go.
It was good to have both of you here. I'm looking forward to your company. Again, I hope you visit again and you keep us posted on how this is evolving. We were just speaking with Simone Beckles of the Ghana Revenue Authority and Kenny David he's the head of the FLEGT Secretariat at the Forestry Commission. We talked about forest law enforcement, governance, and trade, and of course this is information that's important for you. If you want to invest in your country this year and you want to do it in the field of forestry or logging, or you want to get into forestry products and so on, because we're looking for value-added products, and you want to get your products into the EU, you're going to have to make sure that you get familiar with what is required for you to do that.